Welcome to all the students of class 8 to my YouTube channel. This is Karnesh Misra, subject teacher of social study from Lakshmi Prasad Memorial Public School, Gola Bazar, Gorakhpur. Dear students, today we are going to start first chapter of history of class 8. The title of the chapter is The Birth of Modern India, When, Where and How. So let's start with an introductory note. According to the historian, dear students, according to the historians, the modern period of Indian history begins with the death of last great Mughal emperor Aurangzeb in the year 1707 CE century. Though peoples from different European countries had reached the Indian soil much earlier, it was only under the successors of Aurangzeb's, collectively called the later Mughals, that the road to their political, economic, and cultural dominations over the Indian subcontinent was paved. The process of this dominations, as we shall read later in this book, begins with the grant of trading rights by Indian rulers to the European trading companies and reached a high pitch with the conflict among them for supremacies in trade and politics. After successfully fighting a series of battles against their French rivals and some powerful Indian rulers, the British emerged as a dominant power in the subcontinent. Once again, according to the historian, the modern period of Indian history begins with the death of the last great Mughal emperor Aurangzeb in the year 1707 CE. Though peoples from 1707 CE, though peoples from different European countries had reached the Indian soil soil much earlier, it was only under the successors of Aurangzeb, collectively called the latter Mughals, that the road to their political, economic, and cultural dominations over the Indian subcontinent was paved. The process of these dominations, as we shall read later in these books, begins with the grant of trading rights by Indian rulers to the European trading companies and reached a high pitch with the conflicts among them for supremacy in trade and politics. After successfully fighting a series of battles against their French rivals and some powerful Indian rulers, the British emerged as the dominant power in the subcontinent. While the period of 5 decades between 1707 CE and 1757 CE marks the formative years of British ruler in India. It also saw the decline and disintegrations of the Mughal Empire, characterized by the emergence of regional powers such as Bengal, Hyderabad, Awadh, and the Marathas. Apart from the trade war that occasionally brought the European trading companies into conflict over the issues of their mercantile interests and aspirations. A number of politically important events that took place during this period did not directly relate to the rise and expansions of the British power. We have already read about most of these events in class 7. In this class, we shall touch upon the trade wars among the European companies and certain other related events in some details to suggest how the transitions from Mughals India to British India came about. The focus of our study, however, will be on the events that took place during the period of about 119 years, 90 years between 1757 and 1947, when India became independent from the British. 1947, when the British India became independent from the British ruler after a long struggle for freedom. So let's start with our discussions on the factors rooted in European history itself that accounted for transformations of the British from a group of traders into architect of India's destiny before the country at an independence. We shall also discuss why the period of British rule in India is also called the colonial period of Indian history. So let's start about all these things. Transitions in European society from 17th century, many new ideas, philosophies, and institutions started gaining popularity. Subsequently, sweeping changes occurred in the general outlook, perceptions, and world view of the peoples. So these ideals, philosophies, and institutions also inspired peoples to look for new means and technology of productions, and undertake expeditions to distant lands. They gradually realized that these distant lands could open up a source of raw materials for their domestic industries and new help them to discover a new markets for the consumptions of their products. The terms modern was originally used for the period of European history that encompassed all these developments, starting with the collapse of the medieval feudal systems and culminating in the industrial revolutions in world history. Important events such as the American War of Independence 1783 and the French Revolutions 1789, formations of Italy and Germany, the two world wars, etc. All of these events, however, the industrial revolutions in Europe clearly relates to British rule in India. The most prominent aspect of the modern period in Indian history, it would be worthwhile therefore to touch upon the key features of the effects of industrial revolutions that went on to shape the modern Indian history to a large extent as we know it today. So let's start in how the industrial revolutions came about. Industrial revolutions in Europe was a series of great changes which influenced the growth of the modern European society. So industrial revolutions in Europe was a series of great changes which influenced the growth of modern European society. These changes were caused by the introductions of new technologies and inventions of the new mechanical devices in in Europe between the 18th and 19th century. They increased the quantity as well as the quality of industrial productions while reducing the production's cost. Manufacturing, agriculture, mining, transport, and technology were some of the key areas that were influenced by the industrial revolutions. As a result, the social, economic, and cultural lives of different European countries underwent complete transformations. England was the first European country where where the industrial revolutions started. So England was the first European countries where the industrial revolutions started. Subsequently, it spread throughout Europe, North America, and the rest of the world. As a result of the industrial revolutions, England's industrial productions increased manifold within a very short span of time. Generally, a competitions began among the European powers, including England, France, and others, to explore those regions beyond their own frontiers that would serve as the markets for their productions and also ensure a regular supplies of raw materials to support their domestic industries. This marked the beginning of the age of colonizations. Colonizations, Upanimeswa, signifies the subjugations of a country by a more powerful country. It accounts for many political, economic, social, and cultural changes in the country that is ruled. This country is called a colony, while the country that rules it is called the imperialist country. Imperialist country. The fundamental goal of the imperialist country is to exploit the economy of its colony and derive the maximum benefit out of it. Colonizations leads to poverty in the colony and bring prosperity for the imperialist countries, where domestic industries grow on the raw materials and resources drained out of the colony. So the colonizations began in India, colonizations of India. Dear students, in 1600, a group of English traders founded the English East India Company (EEIC), English East India Company in London. We have read in class 7 how Thomas Raw, the envoy of King James I, secured from the Mughals Emperor Jahangir certain trading rights for the merchants of the EEIC. About a centuries later, Farooq letters Mughal rulers granted important trading rights to English merchants through a royal firman. Following its victory in the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the EEIC becomes the dominant political powers in the Indian subcontinent, and gradually most of the Indian subcontinents become the part of the British colony. Thus, the company that came to India as a trading organizations became the master of the Indian subcontinent. India became a colony of the British, who ruled the country till 1947. We will read about this in the more details later in this book. Major changes. A number of changes came about in different spheres of life during the 190 years of the British colonial rule. Let's take a brief look at them. The geographical changes. What are the geographical changes that take place during the 90 years of the British colonial rule? The geographical changes in the year 1757, the Indian subcontinent was divided into a number of kingdom and provinces. Large provinces like Hyderabad, Bengal, Awadh accepted the nominal rule of the decaying Mughals. There were also some independent kingdoms such as those ruled by the Marathas, Rajputs, and Over the next 190 years, the British came to establish their direct rule over large parts of India and maintain their strong indirect rule over all other local kingdoms which came to be known as a princely states. In 1947, when India became independent, it comprised over 565 princely states and directly administered territories of Britain. The political change. The British rule in India was first established under EEIC, East India English Company. However, after 1857, the British Crown or the British government took direct control over India and ruled the country till 1947. Another striking political development was the emergence of coherent and organized oppositions to British rule by people across the Indian subcontinent. Initially, these oppositions came from local jamidar, peasants, sipais, and tribal people. Subsequently, it becomes more organized, drawing peoples from different sections of the Indian society. The other major political development during this period was the establishment of an administrative, legal, military, and political structures that formed the backbone of the British rule in India. Indian nationalism. In these books, we shall frequently come across the term nationalism. Essentially, this term signifies love for the nations. Nationalism, it signifies love for the nations in the of context of in the context of a country under the rule of some other country under the rule of some other country, it reflects a strong desire to get independence from foreign rules. The revolt of 1857, as we shall read later, was the first expressions of the Indian nationalism. This revolt was on numbers of provincial rulers of India, supported by their people as well as Sipahi or Indian soldiers in the British army, rebel against the colonial rule. Though the revolt was suppressed, it made the peoples living in different regions of India realize that if they stood united, it was possible to overthrow the British. So, the concept of India as a nation and Indians as a peoples are united as a nations and Indian as a peoples, a united country and not just a collections of small provinces and local identities to say. Okay? In the later chapters, this book we shall read it details about Indian nationalisms and how it paved the way for the growth of the freedom struggles, eventually leading to our independence from the British rule. Independence from the British rule. Okay, students, that's sufficient in this sessions in this part of video. More we will discuss in the next ones. Thank you for listening me. Have a great day to all of you. Take care on your health. Continue your study. Okay, once again, thanks to all of you for listening me.